The 1992 Winston Cup season started off with so much promise for Davey Allison, Robert Yates Racing, and crew chief Larry McReynolds. A win in the Daytona 500 looks pretty good on any NASCAR resume. Davey won 5 races that season and the Winston All-Star race. But 1992 was also marked with devastating crashes and tragic loss.
If you look at the almost 70-year history of NASCAR, you could look low and high and far and near, and I don't think you could ever find a driver in a race team that went through so many highs, and there was a lot of highs, and in so many lows. I just don't know if it would be physically possible to find a team that endured so much.
Davey Allison might have won the 1992 Daytona 500, but it wasn't easy. Nothing was easy for the group that year. Preseason testing had not gone well, and it wasn't until just before leaving for Daytona that Larry Mack felt like the team had finally hit on the right combination. And just to make sure, the team ran its Daytona 500 car in the Speed Week's opening Busch Clash. Davey finished 4th, and his chances for the 500 were looking good, but we're still not in the clear.
Final practice on Wednesday, before the day of the qualifying races. Somebody blows an engine going off into one, and Davey's right behind him, got in oil, hit the frickin' wall. Not only was it the final practice, Rick, it probably was 15 minutes to go in the final practice.
Wow.
So I hollered to the boys, get the backup car out. It was pretty much ready to go except for intake, manifold, and carburetor. We only had, Robert and them, one intake and one carburetor for Daytona and Talladega. So they'd start scrambling, unloading the backup car. Doug and Jeff Clark are putting the intake on it and the carburetor on it as it's coming down the tailgate.
Here's how elite Davey Allison and Robert Yates Racing were. Despite having to bring out the backup car the day before, Davey surprised onlookers with a 3rd-place finish in his 125-mile qualifying race, which put him 6th on the starting grid for the Daytona 500. After all that, Davey dominated the 500, leading 5 times for a total of 127 laps. The victory has one more behind-the-scenes story, and it's perhaps the craziest, the stupidest, and the most criminal one of them all.
About halfway through Speed Weeks, Norman Koshimishi, our truck driver, he came to me, he said, "We're missing a radio." I don't know, Norman, we've been through so much this Speed Weeks with backup cars and back and forth. I said, I don't know. We never found that radio until about 15 laps to go in that Daytona 500. Somebody had stolen that radio, and a fan or something had it and was talking to Davey during the closing laps.
You're joking.
No, sir.
I've never heard that, ever.
During the closing laps. Didn't get carried away, but he would say stuff like, "You better get going, Davey. Here comes that 21 car. You better get going. Here comes more."
Wow.
And it's a helpless feeling because there's nothing you can do. There is nothing you can do. If you go to Channel 2, whoever's got this radio is going to go to Channel 2 too. So we had to, Davey had to live with that, you know, but we won the race.
Did anybody ever say anything?
No.
I mean, did y'all try to say, "Hey, please let us run our race"? Or?
Oh yeah, but that you knew real early. The more you made that plea, the worse it was going to get. So we finally just ignored whoever this person was.
Did you ever find out?
Mm-mm. Never found the radio. Never even remotely knew who it was.
E.J. Pop Allison, Davey's grandfather, died April 1st. And 4 days later at Bristol, Davey was involved in this mid-race accident. He would rarely, if ever, be physically 100% the rest of the season. But this is what you need to understand about Davey Allison.
And the next week, we go to North Wilkesboro, and we're just trying to make sure Davey starts that race. Because, again, we're already in the thick of this championship. And Jimmy Hensley he did about all the practice, and Davey ran a few laps in happy hour. But Jimmy Hensley ran majority of the practice in qualifying. And it didn't take long in that race. I mean, it was about 90 degrees that day, and poor Jimmy Hensley stood there all day long in the pits with a uniform on and his helmet under his arm. But it didn't take long to realize, I believe we got a race car that can win this race. And I walked over probably 150 laps in the race, and I said, Jimmy, we appreciate what you've done, and you are welcome to stay with us, but I'm telling you, he ain't getting out of that car. And he didn't, and we ended up winning the race.
Yeah. Not quite a decade old, the future of the Winston All-Star race was in doubt. There had been some highlights, to be sure, but the event had also seen its share of stinkers. Some wondered if the All-Star race was worth staying on the Winston Cup schedule. But that was before one hot night.
Davey Allison coming up, but I don't think will be a factor. Kyle just hauls it off the corner. He's got the inside. He's up to Earnhardt's bumper. Earnhardt takes it.
They're on the racing service down on the left part of the racetrack.
And wins. And it's Kyle Petty. Kyle Petty coming to the checkered flag. Here comes Davey Allison to the bottom. It'll be the finish everybody was waiting for. They crashed past the finish line. They have crashed into turn number 1.
Larry McReynolds was torn, personally with deep concern for his friend and driver. Professionally, Davey's accident that night had left Robert Yates Racing this close to being out of race cars.
This just goes to show you a little bit about the camaraderie in that garage area back then and even today. But I remember sitting on a cooler right after the race and almost just sitting there kind of in a funk, waiting to load this destroyed race car up and get to the hospital. And Tim Brewer, crew chief for, of course, Bill, for Junior, walked over and sat down on the cooler, and he says, man, y'all tore some race cars up, hadn't you? I said, Tim, you have no idea. I said, we're out. I said, what you just saw is it, other than our Daytona Talladega cars and our Sonoma car. I said, we are out. I said, the guys are working as we speak on our, we would have hoped would have been our backup car for the 600, but now it's going to be our primary. And, of course, we're getting ready to go to Charlotte, the Dover, the Pocono, the Michigan, the Sonoma. You know, we're getting ready to do this little trek. And he says, why don't you send Norman up to Eagle Hollow? He said, I got a car up there that we actually won one of those 4 in a row with back, earlier in the year. He said, we're not using it. He said, just stick it in the top of the hauler and keep it as a backup and keep it as long as you need it. And the whole month of June, in the top of that hauler was a Budweiser car with Texaco Howland decals stuck down in the right window in case we ended up having to use it somewhere.
Davey's Bristol injuries had been bad, and Charlotte was worse. But Pocono, he had never experienced anything like Pocono.
And I heard Terry Thronberg, our spotter, go, Davey, you okay? Davey, you okay?
Wow.
And Robert, who scanned NASCAR and who scanned other drivers, I looked around at him and he was as white as a sheet because of what he was hearing NASCAR and other drivers that drove by that wreck. Mm-hmm. And, we knew once we got to the infield care center and they had airlifted him that it didn't appear there were any life-threatening injuries.
The accident was triggered by contact with Darrell Waltrip, a driver who is no stranger to the Allison clan. DW had replaced Davey's uncle, Donnie, with Diegard Racing back in 1975. Davey's dad, Bobby, had gone at it with Waltrip for what seemed like forever. Davey and DW, before Pocono, they had gotten together a time or two as well. Darrell won that day in Pocono.
And I remember looking over and seeing Darrell in that 17 bunch celebrating victory lane. It made me just want to stop the car and get out and go over there and just yank them out of victory lane. It's like, how in the hell can y'all celebrate? Yeah. And we get to the hospital, and Judy Allison met us in the hallway, and she says, guys, I just want to tell you, he does not look the greatest. He's very swollen from the G-forces. Yeah. And sure enough, we walked in that room, and the poor little guy, his ears looked like they were back around on the back side of his head. Yeah. His forehead looked like it was about that big, just from the swelling.
Yeah.
But he looked at us, and he didn't say, hello, how are you? He looked at us and says, I'm going to kill that son of a bitch. I'm going to kill that son of a bitch dead.
Incredibly, Davey started the car at Talladega, the next race on the Winston Cup schedule.
We'd been working with Les Richter and Dick Beatty on Davey. You know, Davey came over to a hangar over on the backside of the racetrack on Saturday. We took a show car over there, practicing getting him in and out of the race car. And so Davey's going to start the car at the rear of the field, and Les Richter called Robert and I over to the trailer on Saturday. Davey had to make some laps in that car. So we got him over there, and he made a couple of 3 laps in the car by himself on Saturday. So we got over to the NASCAR hauler, and I said, Les, I think we got a good plan. I said, you know, Davey's going to start at the rear of the field, and I said, we'll just stay out of harm's way, and then we'll get the first caution. And he stopped me and says, you don't have a plan. We got a plan. You'll play by our plan. He says, we will make the decision when he gets out of that car. He said, caution or no caution. We're allowing you to let him start that race. By the way, with his hand Velcroed to a shifter, we're not going to have him out there very long in this environment.
And this was Richter or Beatty?
Les Richter.
Okay.
And he says, he starts at the rear, and if he so much as passes a car, we will bring him in.
Emotionally, the season hit rock bottom on August 13th when Davey's younger brother Clifford was killed in a crash during a Busch Series practice session at Michigan. Offered the chance to take the weekend off to go home and grieve, Davey turned it down in no uncertain terms.
Robert and I were rooming together, and we're trying to find Davey and get in touch with Davey. Finally got in touch with him. And I was on the phone with him. I said, Davey, I said, what do you want us to do? I said, I know I can call, oh my gosh, Jim Sauter. I think he's available. He says, why? I said, well, Davey, I would assume you want to go back to Hueytown. He said, let me tell you something. He said, yeah, my brother was killed today. And of course, remember, this is just a month or a little less than this crash he had at Pocono. He said, yeah, my brother was killed today. And he said, I've got a hole in me that burns when the wind blows. But he said, I'm here to do a job, and I'm going to do my job, and we're going to win this race on Sunday, and then we'll go back and take care of business in Hueytown. It's so amazing. It took Davey, who had this horrendous crash at Pocono, who just had lost his brother, it took him to get Robert and I straightened out.
A win at Phoenix in the next to last race of the season put Davey back atop the Winston Cup standings. Going into the 1992 Hooters 500 at Atlanta, Davey led Alan Kowicki by 30 points and Bill Elliott by 40. The championship was Davey's to lose, and he did, due to an accident in which Ernie Irvin's car missed everyone else's by what seemed like the width of a coat of paint, but then seemed to zero in on Davey's.
You're okay, but man, I'll tell you, what a way to end the championship hunt.
Well, John, you know, that's just the way it goes sometimes. We had some troubles, and we're trying to work our way back up there, just trying to run a smart race, and ran over something in turn 3 earlier in the race, and we had to come in and repair the car from that. We caught a lucky caution flag, and I thought, all right, we're going to be okay now. And then I saw Ernie get loose over there in 4, and, you know, we just ran out of room. You know, I hate it for all of them guys in the garage area. Everybody at Robert Yates Racing deserves a lot better than this. And, you know, they deserve to win that championship this year, and we didn't get it, so we'll just go back and we'll get ready for next year, and we'll come out and try again.
In the aftermath of losing out on the 1992 Winston Cup Championship, Larry McReynolds just couldn't understand why.
With everything we had been through and everything Davey had been through, I was pretty puzzled. How come realistically we didn't win that championship? Couldn't understand it as to the why. On April 1st of 1993, sitting in a hotel in Bristol, watching the news, I reached a comfort level. I knew why we didn't win it. Unfortunately, on July 13th, became puzzled again.
My name is Rick Houston. Please give us a like and be sure to hit that subscribe button. What are your memories of the 1992 Winston Cup season? Let us know in the comments section below.